We're Ayin Heyom at Beis in Yoma 75b. We're discussing the Manna. And the last thing we mentioned was a dispute between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. In understanding the word Mochuspas, which is the word describing the Manna, Reish Lakish said it was something that was frosty, and thus when you touched it, it dissolved, melted. Robert asked how you eat it. Good question. I guess it didn't dissolve that fast, but I guess it started to become like like if you touch a congealed food, it starts to slowly dissolve as you touch it. You still have time to put it in your mouth, though. Yeah, probably something like that. That's what it sounds like, yeah. I wonder what the spiritual significance of... sorry?
It's covered with dew.
Covered with dew, and according to Shlokish, it would start dissolving as you touched it.
I think that even that's interesting because there's also mention about how you can mold it into anything you want. You can knead it into a dough. I guess that's
right.
After you add water to it.
I don't know. I wonder. I really wonder what the spiritual significance of it melting in one's hand means. I don't know what that means. I'm not sure why. Like what's significance of that? But the next opinion, which is Rabbi Yochanan, which said that it was the kind of food that got completely absorbed within the body, and therefore didn't produce any waste.
That's right.
So I mentioned yesterday there's definitely spiritual significance to that, and that's going to be elaborated upon in today's class. So I'll give you the spiritual way of understanding it before, and then as we go along, we'll keep in mind the literal meaning, and then we'll explain it in accordance to what the spiritual meaning is. So, waste is in Kabbalah often used as a metaphor for klipa, for negative spiritual energy. Klipa, that which is ungodly. So just briefly to explain a little bit and see how the parallel with food is. Kedusha, holiness, is that which is absorbed and unified with godliness. In order to be absorbed and unified with godliness, one needs to be surrendered unto godliness. And that's the essence of the Hasidic idea of bittul. Self-surrender is not that one beats oneself up. That's not the idea. The point is one loses one's own sense of selfishness and absorbs themselves within the truth of Hashem. Right. So one way of viewing this on one level is, let's say, like a car. The reason why I can drive a car is because the car doesn't have any independent will. So the car is nothing other than the expression of what I tell it to do. That's a huge high level of bittul described as a merkava, which means a chariot, modern version of a car. Yeah, our forefathers are described as such that their entire lives were just vehicles to express godliness. The complete sense of self has been removed, like a car that has no sense of self, independent from me who's driving it. Right? Now, for the majority of human beings, it's not the case. There is a sense of me and I. I wake up in the morning and I say, I'm hungry. Even before I do any sins, God forbid. If I wake up in the morning and I say, I'm hungry, then there's a sense of me. That's already klipa. It isn't necessarily evil in the moral sense, because waking up and being hungry is not immoral, but it's not godly. It's I. A tzaddik might wake up in the morning and say, my body needs to be fed so I can serve Hashem. I'm hungry. Instinctively, that's what he would say, because he has no sense of independence. He's completely fully surrendered to Hashem. But for most people, there's a sense of I'm hungry. Now, if I'm lucky and I train myself to think, then I'll say, I'm hungry, but the reason I'm eating is because I want to serve Hashem later. So maybe a step 2 after my instinctive I'm hungry comes, I want to serve Hashem. So that's also a pretty good stage, right? But for most people, for the majority of people, they have a sense of self, and therefore that's known as klipas noiga. It's a klipa. It's a shell because it denies the truth that the only reality is God. And I say I'm hungry, I'm declaring that I'm an existence independent, and that's just not the truth, which is why it's called a klipa.
If you say it to yourself without vocalizing it, is that also...
Yeah, it's the same thing. I don't mean verbally,
That comes out. Verbally, you have to make an effort.
Yeah, I don't mean verbally.
It's your mind that just...
That's right. I don't necessarily mean verbally. I mean in your own mind. You can't control it. This is the way we're created. We're not, we can't lose a sense of self. Right? This is the Benini described in Tanya. You can't lose his sense of self, but he can control the way he thinks, he acts. Right? This is the person that Tanya is dealing with. It's the person who naturally feels a sense of self and has to deal with that. But that's klipa. Now, how is that like waste? Because when a person eats, so there's some parts of the food that lose its sense of identity and absorb itself within the body. But then there are parts of waste of the food that retain its sense of independence and separateness from the body, or the body rejects it and therefore cannot be absorbed within the body, and thus it's expelled. Following? So klipa, as it were, is created by that which cannot be absorbed within holiness. That which cannot be absorbed within holiness is expelled as klipa. There's all kinds of usage for this in Kabbalah, describing the waste of the angels. Right? The waste of the angels becoming parts of our reality, as in like we're only the excrement of what the angels are really enjoying. So it's like a very low level of version of life. Right? It's what they can't absorb within their holiness that ends up in our world of sense of independence. And that's klipa. So now if the manna, now let's take this to Torah study. If the manna represents Torah study, then even within Torah study, certainly Torah study is about connection to Hashem. So it's already less selfish than, say, eating. Right? But because we are still human beings, there's still a sense of I in the learning. Even when I learn, there's a sense of me. I enjoy it, I like it, I want to learn more. Right? So there's still a sense of I. So even within my Torah study, there's like this tiny little bit of klipa that exists. Right? Because the way we are.
Tractate as opposed to maybe another tractate.
Yeah. There's that, like choosing one part of Torah or the other. But then there's a sense of self-fulfillment, self-gratification in the Torah study. Right? The sense of me. And it's just the way we are, right? Tanya talks about that. And how to try to focus one's mind to learn Lishma, to learn for the sake of heaven. That's what the Mishnah keeps on talking about, learning for the sake of heaven, not for the sake of my own gratification. Never mind, for the sake of reward and the sake of ego. That's just, I want to show off how much I know. That's just plain out negative. But even just a human being who gets a sense of enjoyment. I like it. I enjoy it. It's fun. It's enjoyable. There's a sense of I there. Even though it's not as much as eating, because when you're coming to eating, it's fully the body. Whereas Torah, there's a soulful experience. Also, you're expressing your connection to Hashem, so it's not fully selfish. But there is a little bit of klipa left within that experience. There's a little bit of waste left that one has to expel from their experience, if you will. Now, if the manna is if that's the case, then we say the manna is the kind of food that's absorbed within the body and no waste. Then that means the divine experience of learning Torah in the form of manna is such that they're so absorbed within the experience they lose any sense of self. It's the highest form of learning Torah. Such for being handed to them on a silver platter by godliness, or maybe because of that, because it's being given to them by Hashem so directly, they completely lose a sense of self. Not exactly, but akin to the fact that the Jews died when they heard God speak at Sinai. It's not that they died of old age and sickness. Their souls expired because they couldn't handle being an independent thing, checking out what Hashem is saying. You can't do that when God's speaking to you. You lose your sense of self. So your soul is absorbed within godliness. So it's something akin to that, is this idea of the manna being absorbed within the body completely. There's no waste, there's no sense of I. There's no sense of self. That's somewhat clear?
So could the body be considered one large klipa?
Yes, the body is one large klipa, that's correct. In the language of the Zohar, it's mishchat choya. It's like a skin, like a snake skin. Yep, that's correct. Mishchat chavya, sorry, it's a skin of a snake, whatever. Not sure how to pronounce it. But yes, if the body is one large klipa, that's nefesh bahamis, that's the klipa. Right, but if it can use to do mitzvahs, then that's the whole battle. Right? Okay, so now in that context, let's learn the Gemara. So we're going to learn it on its literal level, and we'll, as we go along, try to interpret it based on what we just said. So the line, it's a little bit under halfway through the page. Third to last word is Tan Rabbanon. Lechem. There's a little lamed inside a bracket there. Tan Rabbanon. You have it, Aaron? Okay. Tan Rabbanon, our sages taught. The verse reads, Lechem abirim achal ish. Bread of the strong ones. That's what abirim means. The strong ones. This is a verse in Tehillim describing the Jews in the desert, and it says, bread of the strong ones is what man ate. Man ate bread of the strong ones. So who are these strong ones that man is eating of their bread? So it says this Mishnaic age text, Lechem, bread, shemalche, sharas oichlin, that the angels would eat. Oichlin. Lechem, shemalche, sharas oichlin, I say. The Jews ate the bread that the angels would eat. They would eat food the angels would eat. This is the first view. David Rabbi Akiva is the words of Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva is saying the manna was such that they, on a literal level, it's saying they ate bread like the angels ate. And perhaps, using our interpretation, that Rabbi Akiva is saying that the level of self-surrender that Jews experienced in their Torah study in the desert was that of the angels. And an angel certainly does not have any independent will other than the expression of what the divine wants it. An angel doesn't consider what it is and what it wants and what it doesn't want. It's a vehicle. It's like God's car. It has no independent will. It does whatever Hashem wants. And that's the level of the manna, according to Rabbi Akiva. But when these words were said to Rabbi Shmuel, Amar Lahem, so Rabbi Shmuel told the people who relayed the words of Rabbi Akiva to him, go and tell Akiva. Rabbi Shmuel is Rabbi Akiva's teacher, so he's referring to him by Akiva with his first name without the Rabbi. Sorry, yeah?
He said that the angels can only do what Hashem wants them to do.
Yeah.
But the angels on their own fought Moshe when he was taking the Torah.
It's a good question. What that means is a good question. Even that is not because of their free choice. That's how they're created to be. Not because of their free choice. In fact, that's what Moshe tells them. Moshe says, you don't have an evil inclination, you don't have parents. But he's basically telling them you don't have free choice in the struggles we have.
He was telling that to Moshe.
Sorry?
Moshe was asking
God. And Hashem tells him to tell the angels.
What do I say now?
Right. But the argument he gives back to the angels is that you guys don't have free choice, we do. So even the fact that they argue with Moshe is not because of their free choice. It's just the way they're programmed to be. That's a good question.
God said it.
Something like that. Yeah. Okay, so Rabbi Akiva is of the view that the manna was like the bread of the angels. And Rabbi Shmuel, when he heard this, he said, Akiva, go tell Akiva. Akiva, Ta'isa, you made a mistake. How so? Do angels eat any bread at all? That you're saying that the Jews in the desert eat the bread like the angels? Does it not say, when Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to the mountain, or many years later when he describes himself going to the mountain, he says, Lechem lo yachalti, I did not eat bread, and I didn't drink water. So if Moshe Rabbeinu didn't eat and drink when he was up in the mountain, certainly the angels don't eat and drink. So why are you comparing the manna to the angels? Right. If that's the case, what does the verse mean when it says, the verse in Tehillim which says that that man ate like the bread of the strong ones? Who are these strong ones? According to Rabbi Shmuel. According to Rabbi Akiva, the strong ones are the angels. And the verse is saying that the Jews ate like the angels ate. But Rabbi Shmuel rejects that and says angels don't eat at all. So what does the verse mean when it says that man ate like the bread of their strong ones, avidim? So says the Gemara, says Rabbi Shmuel, read it differently. Not avidim, but evarim. Put a different vowel under the aleph. Instead of abidim, which means strong ones, turn it into evarim, limbs. And thus, lechem shnivl masayim v'arba'im shmoneh evarim. And therefore, we must therefore say, and therefore says Rabbi Shmuel, this means that there was the kind of bread that was absorbed within their body completely and there was no waste. This is what the Gemara says. Okay.
That's what it means, strong limbs?
Sorry?
That's what strong limbs
Yeah.
means?
So he's changing the word abidim to not mean strong anymore, but evarim, limbs. So it would mean lechem evarim, bread of limbs, or bread that's completely absorbed in limbs. Achal ish is what man ate. Now the fact that angels don't eat bread could either be read in two ways. Either it means the angels don't eat Torah, so stop comparing it to the angels. Or probably more likely, that the angels' Torah is even higher than the food that's completely fully absorbed in the body, has no waste. How's that? Because even if I were to eat food, and that food was completely absorbed in me, So I became one with the food, right? But there's still a part of me that needs to eat food that's outside of me. So me and the food are still separate entities that I absorbed. So it's not, as high of a union as someone who doesn't need to eat bread because it's just a straight.
It's not as perfect, I guess.
It's not as perfect as an angel. Maybe that's what it means. And that's what it means an angel didn't eat. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the mountain. He didn't eat and drink. His divine communication didn't even require ingesting. He just completely fully absorbed within it. They didn't have to, for example, just thinking about this example because it's in today's Tanya, the last few days, the ray of light that comes out of the sun is very much attached to the sun. But it's attached. The ray of light that's within the sun doesn't have to attach itself to the sun. It's in there. There is only one entity, the sun. And maybe that's the level of the angel doesn't have to, eat bread or eat divine energy to become one with it. It's so submerged that there is no two entities, food and the angel. Whereas for us, even if at the highest level where we're completely absorbing it to the point that we have no waste, we're still separate entities from the food we're eating. We're still separate entities from the Torah that we're absorbing that we have to take within us. Perhaps.
It's one less removed.
Yeah, it's one less removed, exactly. Perhaps. Okay, I'm going to stop over here because there's an interesting discussion coming. But what we're going to get to is, the Gemara is going to tell us that there's a verse which says that the Jews did go to the bathroom when they're in the desert. There's an instruction to prepare shovels, and there's an instruction that they shouldn't relieve themselves within the camp. They should leave the camp and relieve themselves there. And the Gemara is going to want to know, according to Rabbi Shmuel, which says that there was no waste, so why were they going to the bathroom out of the camp?
Right.
Fascinating discussion on that on the literal level. Opens up a whole window to the Jews' experience in the desert when we understand the answer to this question. And it's going to give us a window into the spiritual meaning as well as we go ahead, God willing, tomorrow.
Wow.
Wonderful day and a good Chodesh.